Our next panel discussion will be on the topic Empowering Women Leaders for Inclusive Growth. The panel will be moderated by Radhakrishnan, Global Head, Corporate Communications Wipro Enterprises. Joining her for the discussion will be Kavita Lakhani, National President, PR and Digital Marketing Council, Women's Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Aahana Dhar, Regional Communications and Media Lead, Asia, the Rockefeller Foundation, Bhavna Imran, Regional Communications Leader, Corteva Agriscience, Dr. Sujata Sudheendra, Head Human Resource at Aditya Birla Sun Life and Head of Diversity and Inclusion at Aditya Birla Capital, Namita Ramani, Senior Marketing Manager, Tata AIG, General Insurance and Council Member, WICCI. Shefali Khalsa, Head of Brand and Corporate Communications, SBI General Insurance. Over to you, Radha ma'am.
Thank you, Nehal, and welcome to all my panelists here today, and good afternoon to one and all. Let me start this panel with Shefali and Bhavna. I have this question to you guys. Based on your experience in PR and comms industry, how far do you feel the industry was inclusive early on in your career? And how do you see this situation today when you look back and when you see what it is today?
Hi everyone. Thank you, Radha, for your question, and thank you for starting with me. I would say it's my personal POV that the space of the PR and comms has been always dominated by women. So I would say I have not seen since the time I have started my career 17 years now. I have seen this rather the dominance by the women in this field more than ever. And I guess now it's growing with more women getting into the workforce. I would say there's no such reservance in that, especially for this under this field of PR and comms.
Thanks, Shefali. So mine is slightly different. I have come from a marketing communications background. I didn't spend too much time in the advertising agency, but did spend quite a few years working with GSM and telecom early on. So as a part of the large group, I used to report into to the entire sales and marketing team and report into the head of business. At that point of time, typically what happened was, while I was responsible for brand and reputation, people always looked at me as, oh, she is that young girl who does banners and posters. I tried my best to tell them that I'm helping you all build a story, build the reputation and brand of this big, large GSM firm. But somehow the team just couldn't get it. So I just thought it'll be, we have to figure it out. And like Don Draper in Mad Men says, if you want respect, go get it yourself. So I decided that I'm just going to do that. In the next monthly review meeting, I got them all together and sort of told them a story. And the story helped me to land the importance of brand and communications to take the entire GSM brand forward and the sales forward and how it is an essential part of the role. But what I also did was I told them that I have an additional headcount in the brand team. And this time I'm looking at exploring a man to join us and to give us some diversity of thought. What happened? I think I combated two biases that day. One, the fact that women do only stereotypically young tactical roles. I mean, not capable of doing strategic roles. And the other one is, of course, the role of brand and communications. But the reason I've stated this is, I think from there to now, we have moved forward. I mean, you see organizations and all the organizations intervene with systemic changes and systemic processes to bring diversity and inclusion. We have the business resource groups and we have women panels, and people are coming together to bring diversity together. So there is huge change. I mean, I think we've come a distance, but there's a lot more for us to cover. Radha, you're on mute.
Yeah, I know. I realized that. No, I just said that it resonates, the early part of your conversation when you're talking about how people looked at the function and looked at you as somebody who's creating, posters and banners. Because way back when I started my career in a tech company, I mean, in the technology side of Wipro, actually, a similar kind of, oh, so what can you do as marketing communication other than, churning out these banners and posters? And yes, I guess we have seen a lot of progress from there on, but I guess we still have a lot of ground to cover, and that's Kavita, that's what I actually wanted to talk to you about, because we have also seen in the industry that there are a lot more women employees, women career focused people early on in the leadership journey, but when they start progressing, somewhere it starts dipping, and it starts dipping very badly. So what do you think are the reasons, and what is your take on that?
So thank you, Radha, for this lovely question. I'd just like to begin by saying a big hello to all my co-panelists and to all our viewers. I just love this topic because, like Bhavna said, there's so much that's happening around it. But, I just genuinely feel that there's a very long way to go. And, one of the things that I observe is that, women are working against gender stereotypes stereotypes that have been ingrained for years and centuries. So it's not we've just woken up today and it's a yesterday problem, but it's been around. If you look at it, when I would say humanity started, the evolution of humanity, men were supposed to be the breadwinners, and women were supposed to be the nurturers, right? And from there, right from there, the mindsets have always been on that track, So women are supposed to be taking care of the family and the children and, look after the house. Men, on the other hand, are supposed to have the killer instinct, are supposed to be going out and kind of pending, ensuring that the family has resources, financial resources. So if you think about it, this was a role that was actually defined by society, and to some extent, what we are doing now is turning it on its head because times have changed. That's what's happened. And what we had at the evolutionary stage of humankind does not actually apply now. So the economy is different, the scenario is different. And I think, unfortunately, the mindsets have not really changed as much as fast as they should have. And that's where the problem lies. Mindsets and behavioral changes are not reflective of today's times. That's what I feel. So what can really kind of change here is both genders, men and women working towards this change. Because very simply, I think most people agree now that balanced leadership is the way to go. And there's merit in it for, economies, governments, countries, organizations. So there's absolutely no doubt on that front. I think the big challenge is how do you make it happen? And that's where we are all grappling with it. And I think there's a lot of work going on around it at organization levels. However, I truly believe that it has to come from within when it comes to women specifically. So their way of looking at life has to change. Their goals have to change, because I truly believe that, if you have a goal, you've got to work towards it. But first, to begin with, you have to have a goal. And your goal, like Shefali was saying, there are so many women at, within PR and comms.
Yeah.
But how come none of them are, why isn't there balanced leadership at the top is a question that I'd like to ask. Because truly, when you enter the profession, the media and communications, or the communications industry has possibly the largest representation of women, maybe close to 38%. But when you go to the highest levels of leadership, it falls to a dismal 3%. And that's what I think we should be kind of trying to change.
That's an interesting point you made, Kavita, about stereotypes and mindsets. And when it comes to mindset, it's not just about the organization or the other gender, but it's also a mindset that you carry with
Yes.
yourself. But when it comes to, at an organizational level, and here is where I want, Namita, Shefali, and Bhavna to come in. In terms of our companies giving fair opportunities between, let's say, a competent male employee and an equally competent female employee, right? And what are the best examples that you guys have seen in terms of positive change in the workplace, let's say in the last 5 years? Because needle has moved significantly in the last, couple of years. So maybe referencing it to 5 years would be a good thing to do. So, Namita, would you want to, take a shot first?
Sure, Radha. Thanks a lot for the question. I think I would have loved to say yes, companies have taken efforts and it has actually fruitfully implemented on the ground level. But unfortunately, the answer is no. Companies have been doing a lot of efforts, but ultimately it is not going to the ground level and it's not impacting the people that it should be. According to the study, I think 76% companies want to be diversified and want to attain gender parity, but when you ask the employees that how far are you aware about any such initiatives taken by the company? Unfortunately, they are not aware. So there is a huge gap in terms of what they want to achieve and what they have achieved so far. So for example, I don't know. I've just come across this example where Apple and Facebook, they wanted to offer a service of egg freezing to the ladies, and it was taken very negatively. And they were saying that it's a PR stunt, or possibly they want to basically stop women getting into the reproductive stage and want to devote more to the company. I mean, companies got to be really careful in terms of how they're forming an integrated approach towards attaining this goal. While we see a lot of designations being allotted to achieve this goal, but I think on the ground level, it still takes a lot of time to achieve that.
Yeah, and Bhavna, I mean, let me just ask you the same question. What is your thought on it before, I sort of put in my views?
Sure. So I think like Kavita has mentioned, right? I mean, we do see 38% and more number of people coming on board. But what happens? How does that number fizzle away as you grow up? And just to borrow a phrase from one of the organizations I work, they call it the leaky bucket. Well, why does the leaky bucket happen? And why is the attrition in women so high? So I'm sure the companies are offering the roles, but are they making those efforts to keep the leaky bucket plugged in? And typically, when does the leaky bucket happen? It is when somebody is taking a life stage decision, right? You want to take an off to follow your spouse, have a child. What other interventions which the organization is offering at that point in time? I mean, they are offering physical interventions, like providing a creche, offering some mother's rooms. But is that what is enough? And I know I love this saying which says diversity is being invited to the party, but inclusion is where you're asked to dance at the party, right?
Yeah.
The organizations are doing a lot of things to ask you to be diverse. They are telling you, come join us. We are offering the roles and, equally competent with males and doing everything. But are they doing it in spirit? Is that happening in spirit for us? I mean, look what Namita has just mentioned. The intentions of the organizations are perceived both wrong by us as women and also as men, looking at it as, as either a gimmick or things like that. But I do believe, and as an optimist, I believe that there is change happening. I remember seeing an inclusion poster which had a mother and a child, and the line said, "Don't presume I'll not join in for a late night meeting or a dinner." I mean, that is so good. I mean, we ourselves as women are judgmental about these things, right? So if somebody is looking at such minute unconscious biases, that means there is somebody thinking. But yes, it has to take a long while before we get there. The two positive, I think, things I'm feeling really good about is one, the entire concept of allies. Today, you see a lot of male colleagues and leaders who come forth with positive affirmations. One of my senior colleagues refuses to speak at any panel, irrespective of how respectful that is, saying that if there's no women speaker, I will not be speaking on it. I mean, small gestures, but these are just, I think it's getting there. I mean, there's a lot more happening behind. These positive affirmations are helping us push you to to do those changes. And I'm hoping that these changes will bring us to the next level, and the inclusion actually happens, and then we're going to be joining the party and the dance.
Yeah, I mean, actually, to that point, I guess, it gets much more fast-tracked if a male says that I will not participate in this panel because you don't have a woman on the panel and you don't have proper diversity on the panel. So let's hope that we get to that stage as well. Shefali, what are your thoughts on this point?
So I think I have a little different approach to this. While to some extent, I would say I do echo what Bhavna is saying, that very, very commonly we see that every forum, and with the COVID triggered lockdown, we've seen, we all have been participating in a lot of panels, right? So all these panel discussions, webinars, which has suddenly spiked up, we see a lot of women participation. So I definitely buy your point, Bhavna, on that. In fact, I would say yes, even the corporates. Largely, I would say we are all talking about the corporates, not really touching the other industries which are out of our purview, or not even thinking about those industries. But largely speaking of the corporates, I would say we have really grown very positive in terms of the women participation in the CXO level. In fact, today's Times of India also reads some stats. India is actually having a women participation of 39% at a CXO level compared to 26% globally. This is all positive signs. In India, it is 47% of women who are CEOs of the companies compared to what is 26% globally. 41% CFOs are women in India compared to 22% globally. So we are progressing. I somehow, I think I'm the only odd man out that is having a very positive approach here. I'm not very pessimistic, but I would touch wood, I would say, fortunate enough to have my career in a very positive such environment, I would say. In fact, currently I'm with SBI General since 2 years, and we have about 18% of women in the leadership role. So, which is a positive sign, right? And in fact, talking about the corporates also, there are guidelines that they need to have certain percentage of women representation even in the boardroom. So we are progressing. In fact, in my last assignment where I was working for the longest tenure of my career, 9 years I've spent, I had seen women in the boardroom as well. So I feel very proud of the corporates that I have worked with. And somehow I have a very positive approach to this, that India has progressed. In fact,
surely, it's just that.
Sorry, just to add one more thing. About 3 or 4 days, I'm a very still a fan of those offline newspapers. So I'll again cite one example, that there was one full-page ad 3 days back, if you can recollect, a leading Chinese automobile manufacturer. They had put up a full-page ad saying that we have 33% of women workforce, and they're aiming to make it 50% in 3 years. Yeah. So. Sorry,
in fact,
but I'm very
I saw
positive.
that too. Yeah. No.
Yeah,
I mean, I think all in this panel are only hoping and really wanting passionately that this tribe grows and grows much more faster and at a faster pace than what it is. Aahana and Sujata, you guys have been a bit quiet. Sorry, I mean, my next question to you guys. One of the biggest barriers to making progress in gender equality rests in the minds of men and women, which is what Kavita pointed out as well. But my question to you guys is, how can we overcome? There is a lot of unconscious barrier, and how do we overcome that?
Sujata, would you like me to go first, or?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Radha, for that question. I think I come from a social impact space right now. And so this is a question we actually ask ourselves very often, not just within the workspace, actually, but also the people that we're working with every day, and to make an impact in their life. The unfortunate truth is that gender bias is so deep-rooted in our society that it's almost automatic. Even the most progressive or work among us, can be guilty of it. Unfortunately, these biases function as an invisible barrier for women in the workplace, at least. While most people know that women have different experiences than men at work, every time I spoke to majority of leaders in my earlier experience, most being men, sadly, were in denial about that particular fact. Every conversation ended with men saying that they believe men and women have identical opportunities, workplace experiences, career paths. Consequently, I think what they wanted to convey was that they believe women do not succeed because of their individual choices or capabilities, but because of unwelcome and not they do not succeed because of their individual choices and capabilities, and not because of hostile work environments or other such factors. And let's take a simple example, considering that all of us are communications professionals. Women and men with similar skill sets are often described very differently. I think language at the basic illustrates this gender bias.
Yeah.
Men are called persuasive and women are called pushy in the exact same situation. Men, when they keep following up on a work opportunity, are called relentless or strategic. And I've heard this personally. Women are dismissed as aggressive or calculated. So I think to achieve gender equality, we all have to learn how to identify our own unconscious bias and start actively working towards it. We need people to be comfortable calling it out without any fear of retaliation. And then men and women to be okay hearing and confronting their own biases. Even though managing discrimination can be challenging for leaders, it's a lot harder for employees to work in an environment where their identity is devalued. My husband, from a personal angle, my husband recently went through one of these trainings. Sorry.
Yeah, please go on.
My husband recently went through one of these trainings and he said something very interesting that I always remember. He said that being in a position to tackle the inequality that you yourself may have never have to experience is an ultimate privilege. So yeah, I think those are some.
That's a dream situation, Aahana. It's a complete dream situation, and hopefully we all get there very soon. Sujata, your views on this point, please.
Yeah, so good afternoon, my co-panelists, and good afternoon, everybody. I think when you're the last one to speak, your first four co-panelists would have actually, said it all. So I have to add a little value. I completely, definitely resonate with what Kavita and Aahana said. You cannot eliminate bias. You can at the most reduce it, because instead of saying why we should, where did it come from? It came right from your childhood. It was all scripted, because we expect a child to behave in a certain way. The minute you're defining a behavior, the bias sets in. It's as simple as that. I'll give you a small example. When it comes to technology, we want the latest technology. You want the latest iPhone. You want the latest medical treatment. You want the latest comfort. But when it comes to mindset, we are very, very clear that this is what the role that you have to play. Yeah. And I think pandemic, while it created havoc, it just, broke our mindset. The myth that talent has to be mobile has the best lesson that we, especially in HR, has learned, that if you're talented, you don't have to be mobile. You can operate from anywhere. I think that's one of my biggest takeaway. Now, organizations play a very, very great role in reducing the biases. See, unless and until the senior management will not believe in this, how much ever we all talk about it, it will not happen. As simple as, can we make the profiles, the CVs, gender neutral? Can we use a gender neutral language? Can we ensure all the communications are gender neutral? That's all. We are saying that meritocracy is the underlying factor. There is no compromise on meritocracy. We are not asking for quota. We are not asking for favors. We are saying make it gender neutral. Now, the best quote that I remember what Jeff Bezos said is, who is a potential? Potential, we will say, data. He should be data driven. You should know markets. You should know segments. No. The person who is able to make the decisions, right most of the time is a potential. For example, that individual has, the thinking ability, foresight, can look into future, can understand, what is abstract. That individual is what you have to look for as a potential, rather than saying gender. Yes, it's nothing against men. I'm saying, first, women should accept, yes, I will want to stand alone. I have to speak the truth. It's okay, I will stand alone. And secondly, I should be very clear that this is what I'm going to express. Thirdly, I think organizations should start feeling comfortable with data and gut. We are so number driven that we feel very confident if I'm rattling off numbers without understanding that women have this innate ability. So, I feel it'll happen like this, and it happens largely like that. Again, it's a thought processes, but for us, it just comes as one information. And so now coming back to the organization, I think people will start believing it when we are calling for diversity, that when they see benefit or they're penalized. I'll give you the smallest example, Radha, here is, when the pandemic struck, we said, please start wearing mask. We will not listen. But when you impose a penalty, you will wear mask. It's as simple. Till we reach a certain stage or a certain percentage, it has to be a process. Then it can become a culture. Then it can become your behavior. But until then, I think you should have your systems, processes, enablers, and rewards and penalization to make it happen from an organization perspective.
Yeah, I agree to some extent, Sujata, but I also have, earlier in my career, I do not know whether that happens even now, but earlier in my career, I had also seen a lot of organizations sort of saying that for this particular role in marketing or communication, they have decided that they would recruit, a female candidate. I'm honestly, I have some reservations around that, because, and in fact, there are some places where I have said that I will not come. I mean, if you guys, I don't even want to apply for this, because if you guys are straight away telling me that this role is reserved for a woman, right? I mean, I'm really not comfortable with that thought process as such, because I feel that that itself has a certain kind of a bias, and a certain kind of a subtle messaging, probably internally also you're weaving, which is not good. And somewhere I think, Kavita, this is probably the right time for you to step in, because you were the one who first made this comment about it all resting in the mind, and I want you to conclude here in terms of how can all of us, whether it is male or female, overcome this unconscious barrier.
I can't help thinking that, one of the things that I feel is that, women need to have, now whether it's, I'm going to pick up both the genders separately and then organizations. So we've talked quite a lot about what organizations should do. Shefali debates it all with us. But I think I'm glad to hear that she's had a couple of great experiences. But by and large,
Yes.
majority organizations, I'd agree with Namita, that a majority of the organizations that I've come across have great intent, but don't have on the ground policies or that enabling culture. And cultures are not built overnight. So I think one thing that I have to say that, somewhere I'm going to agree with Sujata that, the most important thing is that this has to be a buy-in right at the top, at the CEO level. It needs to be a KRA or a key result area for the CEO to ensure 50-50 leadership, balanced leadership right at the top. The rest of the levels will then fall in place. The culture will fall in place. The infra will fall in place. The flexi hours or anything that is required to make it happen will fall in place. So I would say at the organization level, just one single point and we are sorted there. As far as men and women, the two genders, I think men are already playing a highly supportive role, and I think they need to continue on that path. The more they do it, the better they're going to be appreciated by the women around them. And I think it's also good for them because I think they're getting a very different perspective to layer theirs. So I truly believe that we need to celebrate the uniqueness and the differences of both the genders. So from that perspective, I think men have a huge role to play. And Bhavna actually gave us very granular examples of how they can be supportive. As far as women are concerned, I think one of the things that they need to do is, like I earlier on said, have a plan. And that plan should be to be the best that they can be, to go for the leadership roles that they need to, that they aspire for. And I would say, how do they go there? Because that's very important as well. It's not good enough to just wish for something. You have to have a very, very specific plan. And there are only three things that I'd say over here. That, one is that look for a mentor who can and actually lean on their experiences to help you get there. Secondly, build your networking circles. I think this is what men do effortlessly. They are born networkers, I would say.
Absolutely.
Going for a Friday evening beer session is just like something that they do all the time, Whereas women have other priorities like family, and they just don't think it's worth the time or whatever. So I think they need to now make that effort to network, and it's possible because of the. I think COVID is good because there are suddenly so many networking opportunities online that women need to kind of use it to their advantage. And the third thing, which I can't stress enough on, is really upskilling and learning. And I think this is an area that's so important for leadership. So in my mind, learning and leadership just go hand in hand. Today, if you're not better than the best, you don't stand, and it doesn't matter whether you're a woman or a man. So these three areas, and I think they'd be able to work around any kind of self biases that they have, or inner barriers that they have, because these three areas, which is really about having a goal, looking for the mentors, looking for networking, and working towards it, kind of helps you get that confidence. So I think that's where you break through that mindset of yours that I can't be a leader, or should I rise, that ambiguity, that you have. So yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yeah, so, in fact, where there is barrier of any kind, the pay gap is something that closely, comes with it, because they are like two sides of the coin, right? I mean, bias and pay gap. And we have seen across sectors, in fact, we keep reading all kinds of reports saying where there is huge pay gap between a male employee and a female employee doing similar kind of roles and having similar kind of experience levels, etc. So, how significant is it in our industry? And Namita and Shefali, I want to ask you, what is your opinion on how these imbalanced policies and pay gaps can be addressed by an organization? Namita, can you hear me? Shefali,
Yes.
can you?
Hi. Hi, Radha. So, like I said, that developing a policy is one thing, and getting implemented on the ground level is another thing. So I think couple of steps which I think can work this very well is probably when you're hiring, of course, look for to maintain the diversity, you'll have to look for women employee, and not just basis the gender. Of course, you'll have to look at the skill set. You'll have to look at what is the pay gap that they have, because pay gap is across the industry. So I think when you look at, there is already a difference in the pay amount that your company would be paying, and the current salary. I think we should stop looking at that, and we should actually develop this process as try to manage somehow and get onto the industry level pay as the other gender would be getting. The couple of other practices probably give them rather than the other point which I wanted to pay attention to is basically, rather than getting these benefits, I think I completely agree with Kavita that these benefits will be very will have to generate a little sustenance approach. But when you're actually working on yourself, working on your own development by mentoring and developing your skill, that'll probably, you'll be able to overcome these challenges and overcome these balances in a very nicer way, and you would not feel that you're actually getting any sort of favor from anybody. So I think we should develop skill set and then get those sort of deserving position than having getting a favor from the organization.
Yeah. What do you think, Shefali, on this? Shefali, can you hear me?
I think Radha, Shefali seems to have lost the network. I can't see her.
Okay. Oh, fair enough. So that sort of brings me to the last question of this panel actually, which is, and Namita, I'll probably continue with you because this is also something where I want your opinion on it. Do you see more women taking the hot seat in the future? What can companies do to like how they say, break the glass ceiling, how women can break this glass ceiling, and how companies, what can they do to get more and more gender equality in C-suite?
So, rather the answer will again remain the same, that I would personally believe that rather than taking benefits which are just made for women, we should of course work on your own development. We should have a plan in place. You should actually be so strong that you can fight all odds that are coming on your way and reach out to the position. The only thing I think what is missing in our gender, possibly, I don't know if I generalize this thing, but I think we don't value ourselves as much as we should, So the moment we start valuing ourselves, nobody can actually take us for granted. It may be anyone for that matter. It may be a women. It may be when you're competing with women to women, or maybe a competition is somebody on the opposite gender. I think it's the best time. Pandemic, of course, has given us this value to this time to basically connect with ourselves, develop our competencies, and be so strong mentally and emotionally that nobody will actually take you for a ride. Or maybe if you're deserving, then of course you will have to get this position. Nobody can really take you on a ride just because of your gender. So I think companies, of course, can just recognize the value that you can bring it on the table, and with an intention to bring this sort of diversity in the whole corporate world, that is again going to benefit them in terms of becoming more agile. I think that's the only thing I can probably.
Yeah, so Sujata, like what Namita was talking about, how do you make companies, see value and realize the kind of value women bring in, and how do they, have this gender equality in C-suite specifically? So what are your thoughts?
Rather, for any organization which is very progressive, it will be a three-pronged approach generally. One, they should be sustainable. One, they should be profitable. Three, they should be futuristic, simple. For this, for these three things, two things are very critical. That means I should be innovative, I should be customer-centric, correct? And for these two things, you need diversity. That's a simple answer. Research over the years and years has said a diverse organization is the most profitable organization and has, been through different crises and yet sustained themselves. So diversity is the answer there. Now here, it is the organization and women who have to travel together. And let me just take 30 seconds to tell you a short incident which happened with me in Aditya Birla Group 10 years back. I was working with a she was a consultant, and she said, Sujata, what is that you're willing to give up to get in? That is, what are the chores that you're willing to give up? We want to micromanage everything. You want to have a perfect family, perfect house. It does not mean, I'm not talking family, means not the quality part of it. My house should be always clean. I should be a perfect cook. I should do everything and I want to be good. Doesn't work. She said, learn to, just outsource, which is not relevant to you, so that you can focus on your dream. I think that is what we need to do. Then coming back, the organization knows that if they have to be futuristic, they have to ensure that they're sponsored. This sponsorship has to happen by the senior management. Coming back, talent management cannot be a 9-box matrix at all now. You have to relook and look with a different lens that talent is now going to come in a different way. And thanks again to the pandemic. With technology in place, I think most of the roles are gender neutral. I'll give you the smallest example. Collections job, which we thought is a very man should go and collect money. With so much of technology, I think it's become gender neutral. I'll not say it is women, it's for man. It has become gender neutral. With technology, many things have no biases there. Secondly, I think it is the CEOs and the leadership team should be working with HR. It just can't be HR just hire more women. It doesn't work. Unless and until the CEO and the leadership saying we should have whatever is the percentage of women on board. If that happens, we will listen. I'll give you an example. If you are saying this is the target you'll have to achieve, you all will get this much bonus, that we all understand very clearly. So why can't we understand this? So till you reach that level playing field, it's very important to have processes, how much ever, the employee at the grassroots level is trying to, make a noise, but unless and until it is not conducive, unless and until you're not going to give me all enablers which will make me successful, it will not happen. It will be a very good feel-good conversation that we are having across the panel. So unless and until the senior management team is not serious, this will not happen. So the accountability lies there. And of course, as an individual, like what all of us are saying, you have to keep constantly upskilling and learning yourself.
Yeah, true.
Radha, if you
Absolutely.
Radha, if you don't mind, I would like to jump in
Yeah,
here
sure,
for
Aahana,
like
go ahead.
for like a minute. I think it's not enough to be aware of the problem, and it's certainly not enough to throw a quota in place or another training initiative, which actually requires no real effort from leaders, to be honest with you. And to solve inequality, I think we need leaders who are educating themselves, researching, and understanding why these challenges exist in the first place, or what are these barriers that they're upholding, unknowingly. And very often, and this is where I differ from what probably Namita was saying, very often we put the onus on women themselves. We put the onus in us upskilling ourselves, us asking, reaching out and creating a network, which I think is absolutely very important as one part of that entire journey. But if there is no systemic change to the whole thing, I don't think any of this will matter, to be honest.
Yes, yes.
And, and I don't want this to be a very bleak conversation, a very dark conversation. So I'm going to give you a small story that I love hearing when the first time, about women helping women, which is what this is about, which is what the day coming up is all about. So there was, a while ago when President Obama took office, 2/3 of his top aides were men. Women had to elbow their way into important meetings. They had to get in, and many times their voices were obviously ignored. So female staffers adopted a meeting strategy that they called amplification. When a woman made a point, other women would repeat it, giving credit to her. This forced the men in the room to recognize the contribution and denied them to, claim the idea as their own. So this is, there are obviously these amazing, brilliant things that will keep coming up, and we as women will keep making sure to lift other women with us. But I think none of this will happen without systemic change at ground level.
Completely.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just, unfortunately, we are running out of time, and I'm just sort of summarizing few takeaways for all of us. One is that it has to start top down. There has to be a management buy-in, and there has to be a complete involvement by the CEO or the head of the organization, as they call it. Second, I think, is the fact that as women, we need to understand, and we need to both introspect as well as set the expectation right. And like what Kavita says, not give up, midway. The third, of course, is the fact that the ecosystem around us needs to be constantly sensitized. We need to bring in a fundamental cultural change, like what I was saying just a little while ago about probably more and more men should sort of say that if there is no women in a panel, if there is no women in a meeting, if there is no women in senior leadership, then probably something is not right. I mean, start hammering that message that you guys are not doing something right. I guess these are some fundamental things that will help us look at cutting down biases and bringing in that equality, not just in terms of role, not just in terms of how the organization runs, but also in terms of pay, because at the end of the day, uh, all of us feel nice when we see that even how we are getting compensated, there is a fair amount of treatment, right? So thank you guys. Thank you. It's great to have you guys on the board on